Is the Nikon Z9 the right choice for the serious hobbyist, the professional studio shooter, or just someone looking for a high-end upgrade? Who should actually spend the kind of money this camera demands, and who would be wiser to walk away? And, most importantly, does it deliver enough real-world value to justify that price tag for everyday creators? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first started looking at flagship mirrorless bodies, the biggest hesitation I felt was the fear of buying a piece of tech that feels impressive on paper but ends up being a mismatch for the way I actually shoot. I've been through several generations of gear, and each time the biggest regret isn't a broken part, it's buying a camera that either over-delivers on features I never use or under-delivers on the few things that matter most to my workflow. The Z9 lands right in the middle of that dilemma. It promises unprecedented speed, a massive 45.7 megapixel sensor, and internal 8-derived 4K video, but it also carries the weight, price, and learning curve of a true flagship. If you're a professional who spends most of your week chasing fast action, whether that's wildlife and low-light forests, a soccer match under floodlights, or a fashion runway, you'll find the Z9 stacked CMOS sensor and X7 processor a game-changer. The camera can pull 20 frames per second at full 45.7 MP and even 30 frames per second with a slight crop, all while keeping the autofocus locked on subjects. In real-world tests, that means you can actually capture that split-second featherfall or the exact moment a runner's foot hits the ground without worrying about missed frames. The deep learning subject detection tracks people, animals, and even vehicles with a confidence that feels almost like it's reading your mind. I tried it on a local birdwatching outing. The birds were constantly moving through branches, yet the AF never lost lock, and the resulting frames were sharp from edge to edge. Low-light performance is another arena where the Z9 shines. The large sensor gathers a lot of light, and the high ISO handling stays clean up to ISO 12800, with only a modest increase in noise. For anyone who shoots events or indoor weddings without a flash, that translates to usable images without having to crank up the ISO to the point where grain becomes a distraction. The built-in 5-axis image stabilization, while not as aggressive as some dedicated video bodies, still gives you an extra stop or two, which is handy when you're hand-holding a telephoto lens in dim conditions. Video creators will love the internal ProRes 422HQ and H.265 options. Because the Z9 oversamples from an 8K sensor, the 4K 30p footage looks detailed and less prone to aliasing. The ability to record directly in ProRes means less post-production transcoding, a real time saver on set. I shot a short documentary piece with the camera, and the footage held up beautifully when I pushed the colors in post, thanks to the 10-bit depth. If you're accustomed to external recorders, you might miss the flexibility of raw HDMI output, but for most run-and-gun scenarios the internal workflow is more than sufficient. Now, let's talk about the things that might make you think twice. First off, the size and weight. The Z9 is essentially a pro-grade DSLR in mirrorless form, robust, weather-sealed, with a deep grip that feels secure, but it also adds bulk that can be tiring on long handheld shoots. If you're used to a featherlight travel camera, you'll notice the difference immediately. The battery life, while respectable for a camera of this class, still falls short of a few high-capacity DSLRs. In a full day of event shooting, you'll likely need a spare battery or two, which adds to the overall cost. Menu navigation is another area where the Z9 can be polarizing. Nikon's system has been evolving, and the Z9 inherits a deep, multi-layer menu that packs a lot of customization. For seasoned Nikon users, that depth is a blessing, but for newcomers or even seasoned shooters moving from a simpler system, there's a learning curve. It took me a couple of days of digging through the settings to get the custom button layout that matches my shooting style. Once set, the workflow is smooth, but the initial setup time is something to factor in. The lens ecosystem is strong, but it's worth mentioning that the native's mount lens lineup, while growing, isn't as expansive as Nikon's DSLR mount legacy. If you already own a collection of high-end mount lenses, you'll need the FTZ adapter, which works well but adds another piece of glass into the path. In practice, image quality doesn't suffer noticeably, but it does introduce another variable, especially if you rely on fast autofocus with older lenses. For photographers building a new kit from scratch, the Z lenses provide excellent optical performance, but the price points are on the higher side, reinforcing the overall investment required. So, who should buy the Z9? If you're a professional or a serious enthusiast who needs top-tier speed, high-resolution stills, and reliable 4K video without external recorders, this camera checks almost every box. Sports photographers will appreciate the high frame rates.